freezing rain at my house. It's not nice. How about you, Chris? Is it snowing or raining
Well, it doesn't freeze down here in the village, you know.
in the
It's a light,
valley?
fluffy snow.
Well, that would be nice. Well, anyway.
Anyway, so let's call the meeting to order. Everybody's here.
Okie dokie.
Let me see if I can turn
Can
this.
we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December meeting, December 7?
Sure, I'll make a motion to do so.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's dispensed with. The reason that I was anxious to have a meeting now is that obviously we are in the budget process. And we have a lot of expenditures on our wish list and need to try to figure out how we can cover them and what would be acceptable to the town. I did attend the last Board of Finance meeting because I knew that there were some questions about our request for capital improvement in 5 years from now, anticipating that the furnace and the building may last that long if we're lucky, and that in order to make the building useful in summer months, we need to include some air. There was some pushback on that because there were people who thought that was a renovation, and I made it clear that so far, and the only things we're really asking for other than a bit of an upgrade to a dual system is to replace things that are antiquated and beyond their useful life. The Board of Finance is very anxious for us to try to outline, everything that we think we'd like to do with house repairs and improvements.
I'm getting some feedback. I can hardly hear you, Sam.
Oh, okay. Well, let me turn my.
Is that my end or your end? Do you know?
I heard it too. Yeah, I was just
You did.
about to say something.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
I turned my volume up. Maybe that helps. They have made it clear that they would like us to try to look for other funds other than municipal funds. So I've had some conversations with.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So do they mean that they wanted us to go and get grants? Is that what they expected?
They'd like us to go and get grants. They'd like us to look elsewhere. They, with the way the capital funding is set up in Kent, we couldn't even apply for anything. It looks like actually in year 6, because year 5 is heavily loaded with needs of the fire department and other community requests. I don't have that in front of me now to refer to, but it's already, there are a lot of lines in that year 5.
Wow.
Actually, I'm familiar with the whole process one and the lineup as well, as Joyce knows. It seems to me that our $30,000 request is a mere pittance in terms of what, versus a bridge or a road or a fire truck or a town truck. And I think this is just my 2 cents. If indeed we are committed to keeping the building, I think the town has to have the respect for the building as much as it does for a bridge or a fire truck or any other thing, because it's what we have.
Right. Thank you, Chris.
And so they can all tell us to go out and get a grant. So why can't they tell the fire department to go get a grant for a big, $700,000 truck?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they're telling us to go get a grant for a $30,000 request. And I was pleased and especially pleased that it made it into the minutes of the Board of Finance meeting that Jim Blackader,
Epstein.
Ed Epstein and Nancy O'Day-Wyrick are all very committed to keeping the building. And they think it should belong to the town and that it should be properly cared for. They are all in regret that that hasn't happened in the last 10 or so years, but that's history and nothing we can do about that now. But if we are going to try to accomplish any of the things that we talked about in terms of moving and improving the kitchen or opening up better traffic patterns or interior uses, we need to get a very specific quote on what those costs might be.
Am I frozen?
We all froze.
Weird.
I see you moving and I hear you talking. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you
Yep.
hear me?
Okay.
Something popped up saying my internet is unstable, but I've never had that before, so I doubt it.
Oh, maybe it's the weather in Kent.
Well, I'm plugged into the wall. I don't have Wi-Fi, so there's no.
Yeah,
anyway.
that's weird.
Oh,
Dan, can we back up 1 second though? Because you had said that they want us to look for other funds, but then you just said they don't want us to look for other funds for.
well, they haven't said they're not going to fund the HVAC. They'd like, I mean, this is something that Chris has said, and certainly I've heard Ed Matson's opinion on this. I want to know what the whole thing is going to cost. We didn't put in a whole thing request for
Mhm.
5 years from now. Maybe we should put in a whole thing request for 6 years from now, but that means there's 6 years of fallow use and lack of improvement. And I'm just wondering if there are ways that we might be able to jumpstart that process. Maybe the first thing we do is take a look, so we can just get it off the agenda in order. Take a look at our budget request for 2021. Joyce has revised this a couple of times to include replacement of the entire roof, and also the $6,500 that we said we would add to, can you hear me still?
I lost you for a couple of minutes, but
Yeah, I got back on too.
Me too.
Must be
Okay.
something in Kent, because
I
Joyce,
guess.
you're okay, right? You don't have any?
Yeah, no, I'm in Goshen and mine's fine.
Roseanne, I'm just not clear about what they wanted us to go look for other funds for.
They don't know, and I couldn't tell them exactly what the cost will be of the actual improvements or renovations to the building that would make it a much more attractive and functional space for civic use. That isn't anywhere in the capital budget or certainly in the operating budget. And they are anxious to know what that would be and how it would be funded, and
Okay.
if there would be the possibility of outside funding.
Okay.
So aren't we all jumping ahead once again?
Well, we are, because we have to. I mean,
Why?
well, because among other things, we're putting a lot of time and energy and planning into something that we have to try to find a way to execute. And, you know, I, for one, don't love spinning my wheels. I would like to know that the work we're doing now, we have a way to plan to execute that.
I'm sorry, let's say that again. The work that we're doing now, which is what?
Well, we have initially addressed the most urgent needs just to save the building and put Band-Aids on and repair what we can. We know there's more of that work to be done in the next year or so. We know the roof needs to be replaced. I don't know how the Board of Finance is going to look upon a significantly increased budget for Swift House. I think the selectmen have to really work toward making the point that you just made, Chris, that the town owns this building and it needs to maintain the building for any eventual use.
So again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought the process, where we were in the stream of process, is we took care of the immediate needs,
mhm,
and then we had the emergency needs, and we took care of the immediate needs.
right.
And then we also, for planning purposes, whether we own it or not is irrelevant. In 5 years, we plugged in $30,000 for a HVA system.
Right.
But isn't the next job ours to decide what we want to do with this building and put a number to what we want to do with this building to then put forward to the selectmen and then also to eventually the town?
Yes, I
Yes.
think so. I think, we can make it a choice, or we can make a strong recommendation for which there's quite a lot of backing among both, people who are in charge of the purse strings currently on the Board of Finance, and also organizations, civic organizations that would like very much to be involved.
Well, I agree with you there, but that's irrelevant to the degree that it might not even make it out of the committee of the Board of Selectmen. So it's the obligation, I thought, of this committee, this subcommittee,
Mhm.
to present to the selectmen so that they had they had all the information behind them, so
Mhm.
that when they presented to the town, they could say, hey, this is what our subcommittee came up with. This is what we believe in,
Mhm.
and or not, I mean, depending on what the decision is. But if they say we believe in it, then it's the town's decision whether we're actually going to do it with money, because really ultimately it comes down to money.
Right. So my big question from, ongoing is, how do we, let's say we put together a cogent case, we have input from a lot of organizations in town. The Architectural Review Board is very, in terms of Ellen Porcell's chairmanship, she is extremely enthusiastic about preserving Swift House. We get the information together and we make a case for owning and maintaining the building. And then we get the selectmen to endorse that. Then when do we do what we think we need to do in order to make it more attractive, usable, functional, and get people on board? With a 5 or 6 year planning hiatus, the only way I can see to do that is to try to get public support.
Well, again, I'm sorry to go back to it. I don't think we should talk about public support right now. I don't think we should talk about what the building, what we need to go out and do more for the building. I think what we need to do is decide, the three of us right now, decide, is this building worth keeping and why? Now, the basic premise is there are a couple of ideas. People say, just keep it because we don't have enough old buildings in town. Okay, I accept that. I have some people who say, yeah, I really don't really use it, but I know people who use it, and why not keep it? And then there are other people who say, well, no, because I know it's going to cost me a lot of money to keep this thing. Let's get rid of it or sell it or do whatever. So I think we need to answer those questions. Now,
I think you're right, Chris, to a certain extent. I don't know about doing it today, but I would be very interested in hearing the actual rationale from people like Jim Blackadder, Ed Epstein, Nancy, Ellen. I'd like to get some firm commitments from them or some firm statements from them.
Well, it's in the minutes of their, let me see exactly what they said. In the minutes of the last
I agree with you, Chris. I think we need to come close to this decision, but it just to come up with specifics.
It says, Suzanne Charity spoke in favor of the proposed capital funds for the Swift House. Mr. Durham said he would like to see the town make a decision on the Swift House. Mr. Epstein, Mr. Blackadder, Ms. O'Day Wyrick each noted the historic significance of the Swift House. And they said, in fact, they're in favor of keeping it.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I think there's several reasons to keep it. I certainly understand the option of not keeping it from a taxpayer pocketbook point of view, but I think the taxpayer sentiment point of view is another one that's a balance for it. It is a historically significant building. to the town in terms of its age, its location, the family that was involved in it. I think it's also significant in that it's a pretty unusual place to have events. It offers something that the community house doesn't in terms of a more intimate space. We've had this conversation before. I mean, I think a good case could be made, but I'm just curious as to what some of the other major stakeholders have said. I mean, what have you heard, Chris?
I think most people are deciding in a vacuum, and that vacuum happens to be the expenditures. So you'll have the people who are like, I don't like, what do we need a building like that for? The town has nothing to do with it, take it down or sell it or whatever. Because they just don't have in their mind, a purpose, nor do they think it plays a role in the town of Kent.
So they don't know enough about it.
Well, they may. I mean, there are actually some old timers who have that perspective, who known it,
Oh, yeah.
known the building much longer than I, certainly.
Yep.
But I've also had people say, well, it's a town building. It's one of the oldest ones around, and we don't have a lot of old buildings, so it's nice having another balance to that. And again, neither of them have made a determination based on how much money they have to spend as a taxpayer to do it. And I think, and maybe this is a way, maybe we should totally turn our heads on this one. Let's do this. Let's say this committee is only going to obligate, in our mind, no more than an expenditure of $75,000 onto this property.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think of it that way, or whatever number we want to deal with, if we think of it that way and say, we recommend that we keep the building, even though we know we're not going to make a major rental roll out of it.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it's going to require some finagling and work to do over time. We know all of these components, but we think it's an integral part of town,
Mm-hmm.
and it has an architectural component that helps bolster the
ambiance
odd
of
landscape
town.
that we have in terms of structures.
Right.
It's a nice foil to the gas station, and then the quasi old houses across the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're making an argument that over time we need to spend $100,000 on this, $75,000 on this, 150 on it, whatever the number we think is reasonable,
Mm-hmm.
and present that to the selectmen without even saying what specifically we're going to change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I think, we could get into an argument, or we could get into like long drawn out architectural plans or thoughts and ideas. I think if we started with that, that's the question that everyone gets. For $100,000, town, do you want to keep this building? And we're going to improve it over time.
I think that's an interesting perspective on it. And I think the case can be made. One of the other things that I left out was that it is part of what draws people to this town. And God knows we're dependent on tourists. We're dependent on people who want to have their second homes in a quintessential New England town. And the Swift House definitely adds to that appearance and that flavor to the town. I think that might not be a bad idea, because it unless, just playing devil's advocate, if we take that approach, are they going to then come back and say, well, exactly how are you going to spend that money?
Well, that will have to be determined at some point.
Right.
Yeah, they want to know.
But so you're saying, let's just start with this and see what happens?
Well, I just want to maybe just for a sake of discussion between the three of us,
Yeah.
if we can comfortably get our brains around that,
Mm-hmm.
we can then go to the selectmen and say, we could spend years designing and redesigning and planning and replanning. The bottom line is, the people who use this are going to be the same groups that use this. They're not going to generate a lot of money. So this is not a money-making building.
Mm-hmm.
It will require changes, however, to make it more attractive for people to use.
Mm-hmm.
The obligation of the government, if you will, is to let its people, taxpayers, use this.
Mm-hmm.
If the taxpayer wants to use this, in the off chance he'll use it 1 in 10 years, they'll have that ability, and it'll be nice and cleaned up with a kitchen and a better flow and a little bit more better curb appeal.
Mm-hmm.
There will inevitably be questions, as Marge pointed out, about, well, how did you come to this number? What does it include? The other question is, what will the annual budget be to maintain it?
I think
know
that's a good
you
question.
have reservations about the apartment above. When I had a conversation with Ellen Corsell about the building, she said, well, wasn't there an apartment in there? I think I saw it one time because she works a lot with the chamber in the space. And I said, yes. And she said, well, couldn't that be fixed up to rent? Because she said, I can tell you, I know 4 or 5 people right now who would love to rent that apartment. And there's such a shortage of rental space in town, reasonably priced rental space. If you could show that there was some income to the building, I think personally that would make it more palatable. It isn't just all outflow. That
I
would take.
think the idea of renting something to somebody for some income does make sense, but I think we've been told that it cannot be a residential apartment, haven't we?
That's
Yeah.
true.
I thought it would require better stairs and access, but there's no reason that if we could accommodate that in planning, that it couldn't be. You could enter through the back with a stairway that goes up through the place where we already took down the chimney and we're not going to replace it.
Well, maybe
I think that the jury's still out on that. I think we have to revert back to Stan and Joe. I believe, if I understand correctly, and I haven't thought of this in a good long while, I believe I was told that municipalities to rent out to tenants is a challenge.
Mhm. Does that
But
include just like a business tenant as well, Chris? Or
I
is it
think
just
so.
residential?
I think so.
Well, let's see if we can, if we could get that nailed down, because I think that might be something that would be a little more palatable to taxpayers if they thought there was some money coming in. But if we
Well,
can't do it, we
yeah,
can't do
I
it.
mean, that we can nail down pretty
Yeah.
I thought
specifically.
it was just a question of meeting code requirements.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but in any event, to make that so if we assume $100,000 again for just giggles,
Mhm.
that's not including an apartment. To make that a viable apartment upstairs is going to cost well in excess of $100,000. And I think that I don't even want to go down that road. Why? Upstairs is just, we can find out what Joe and Stan say, but
But
I-
just for an office space, you
Well-
wouldn't, I think a lot of people wouldn't mind having it just sort of, if they're like the place up in Warren that John Fabro has. He just rents out these little cubicles to people and he's got a waiting list a mile long.
he's a private entity.
He's private, that's true. Well, yes, so it does come back to the key to what the town can do.
Right. So again, I don't mind using, if you will, or employing the concept that this will bring rent. I
Mhm.
don't think it's going to convince those who don't believe in it that the rent that we get is going to be significant enough to offset. But again,
Yep.
knowing that if we can generate some income from it, wonderful.
Mhm.
But I can't personally get behind something just because of its rent roll, even though that's what I do for a business. I don't think it's appropriate from ours. I think we just have to accept that we want this because it's ours. It has been ours, and we're going to use it on a limited basis and hopefully bring in some money. But to keep it up and keep it looking good, we have to spend money.
It
Mhm.
wouldn't hurt to also point out that we only have a firehouse where it is, and a tennis court where it is, and some senior housing where it is, because it was part of this original parcel and a commitment to the town to own the property and maintain the house. But I have, because the funding of it is difficult, to say the least, with the capital budgets the way they are. I had a conversation with Berkshire Taconic, with their head of grant making, about means that we might, not whether we could apply to them for a grant, but ways in which we might be able to raise private funds toward saving Swift House. or improving Swift House.
Mhm.
And I also did some looking into IRS regulations. You can give money to a municipal town or whatever
Okay,
if it's for public purposes and it can be tax deductible.
cool.
I don't know, you know, it's sort of cleaner and nicer if you can do it through a not-for-profit, but either Berkshire Taconic or Northwest Community Foundation, they all give principally to 501c3 organizations. It's not to say that they would never give to a municipality, but they don't have a lot for historic preservation or, you know, or even programming and maintenance. I mean, it would, if we do this thing well, then it's a job to administer and keep the calendar for use and rent the space for private events and so forth. But I'm looking into that to see, and I have been invited to, you know, make a case to Berkshire Taconic to see what they might be able to work into some of their guidelines for funding. Ellen Corsell said she'd be more than happy to work on a fundraising event for helping to save Swift House. I don't know how many other people feel that, but and there are certainly people in town that, you know, could well afford to help.
I think there'd be people who would
whether they're
do that. It's
whether
just-
we can engage them. And I do think that in order to engage people privately to help with the effort so that we can speed up the schedule beyond 6 years, we need to have something to show them in terms of, you know, renderings or plans, or this is what we hope to do, or, you know, we certainly need to show them that we've made progress. Anyway, there's a lot to think about and plan for. But Chris, I like your idea of, you know, putting a number on what it is we think is needed,
Mhm.
and then trying to leave some flexibility around that. I know that Kevin Brady's been out with COVID. I don't know if he's back working again or if there's somebody else that we could, you know, and also when you met with him, it was before we met and sort of revised what we thought might work for flow and kitchen, etc. I'm flying east on the 7th of March. So I'm here for another month. I'm trying to get both of my COVID shots in before I put myself through an airport again. But I mean, there's some things I can do from here and some things that will have to wait till I get home. But we still have, on the immediate agenda, we still have to give a operating budget for next year. And Joyce, I was wondering if you can fill in, you know, the sort of basic nut for ordinary maintenance for things like the annual furnace cleaning or whatever they do, the gutters, pest control, whatever else is on. I mean, are we charged for lawn mowing, or does that just happen along with all the other
The town does the mowing.
Yeah, and they don't,
No, there's no charge.
there's no charge, okay. Do you know of the maintenance budget, how much of it you're gonna need for all of the regular maintenance?
Well, not at this point. I mean, basically, I took the existing budget and I added what this subcommittee asked for, which was the additional $6,500, which I split between the maintenance and the repairs, and the one-time request for the $35,000 for the roof. It has not been presented to the Board of Selectmen yet.
Okay,
So at this point, I mean, I'm of the opinion that you guys are kind of moving too far ahead. You don't even know that the Board of Selectmen are going to approve the operating budget
right,
and or the capital. And until you get a flavor for what their what their interest and appetite for this whole thing is, I think you guys are kind of spinning your wheels. Not that I don't support the project, but if they stop it, or, say, listen, we feel we can only expend, $50,000 in totality for the building, or we need to make other alternatives, you guys are kind of putting the horse before the cart.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, Joyce, whether the building is, kept or sold,
Right.
Whether we can make a case for keeping it or not, it still needs a new roof.
Right, and I have that in the budget. I'm not saying that I don't have it in the budget, and I'm sure, with Chris being a selectman and on it, he will make a case for it. But let's say, affordable housing comes forward and they have access to monies and they can do it. I think we need to get through the budget process before you guys start making future plans.
Right. Well,
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
We need to plan ahead. Whether our plan is accepted and executed or not remains to be seen. But you can't get anywhere unless you plan. So I'm
So
in planning.
I'm sorry, when do we plan to actually present to the selectmen our findings on what we want to do with this building? When do you want to meet?
Who are you talking to?
All of us.
All of us.
I mean, I don't understand the schedule.
I don't either, because nobody has explained it to me. I thought that was all in the process. I haven't been through a budget.
No, I'm not talking about the budget. I'm not talking about the annual budget. What I'm talking about is, when are the three of us going to pull on our pants and say, let's fight this out and decide what we want to do with this building and how we're going to present it to the selectmen? Because that's really what we have to do. The three of us have to decide.
So this is where we were 15 minutes ago.
Right. And so that's why I said, to make it palatable, let's just pick a number, because we know that a kitchen's going to cost, call it kitchen cost 10 grand. Call a bathroom cost 15 grand. So you got $25,000, right?
Mhm.
Let's talk about having the inside opened up and sort of the flow, as we've talked about a little bit. Call that another $25,000.
Mhm.
And now we're at $50,000.
Mhm.
Now we also need painting and probably floor cleaning, the floors fixed and cleaned, and you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say, redone, if you will. And then some other stuff to make everything sort of look nice and tight. Maybe have to fix another window here or there, or put in a door there or there. So call that another 25. So I'm up to $75,000 to do renovations
Mhm.
in the future for this building. And what I'm
furnishings.
I'm sorry.
That's without any furnishings.
Well, yeah, without any furnishings, because we don't know how that's going to get done.
Kitchen is going to be more than 10.
No, a kitchen's not going to be more than 10, because you're not making a commercial kitchen. You're just putting a small, simple.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry.
You need appliances, and you need built-ins, and you need
There's no way, Zan.
installation.
Okay, so put another 5 into it.
Okay.
It doesn't bother me. What I'm getting at is, if you, Zan, and you, Marge, and I, Chris, agree that that's a number that would be something that we could have a substantial change
Mhm.
to that building and make it attractive enough to the users we know,
Mhm.
and likely the users we don't even know,
Mhm.
that we believe that that is a broad enough populace of taxpayers that would support that change.
Yeah. I agree with what you just
Yeah.
said, Chris. And now that gives sort of the
We need to
breakdown
put
that I was
something in.
asking about. Hang on, Dan, just a sec. Because when I first got us off the track a little bit, it was because I wanted to know what the breakdown of that 75 or 80,000 or 100,000 was. We just did that.
We need to put something in for the yard too.
Yard 2,
So we'd still say we can do it for under 100.
under 100.
Why don't we-
And as we've mentioned before, we not us, but whoever is this group that's going to run it would be, it would be their task to try to find some financing outside of town.
Mhm.
But the town needs to understand that it might not happen, and we should be committed to it.
Right.
And then there are capital improvements that go with that over 5-year periods, like painting the outside, doing all the big, putting in the HVAC, putting in, and we get in line just like everybody else gets in line and argues why we need it.
Mhm. That sounds
Um,
like a plan to me.
I'm sounds good to me too. I think we could do what needs to be done in that price range, certainly. Um, uh, in the meantime, before we get in line, I mean, this $100,000, it's a when and where question. Do we do nothing for 6 years if we can't get anything in the 5th year other than the HVAC system? Or do we try in the meantime to raise private funds? I mean, are there, if the selectmen, if we can convince them and they're committed to this, then are we waiting 6 years before we can implement anything?
I think we
Or is
need to,
there any way around that?
I believe we need to, I think we need to say this. One, we are in agreement, the subcommittee, that the building should stay in the hands of the town of Kent.
Mhm.
And the reason and rationales are, one, it's part of its landscape. Two, it's got a historic value. And three, there are limited town properties.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I would also make the statement that it is unrealistic to believe that this building is going to be self-sustaining.
Mhm.
And that's not the purpose, however, of a
Right.
municipal building, to be self-sustaining.
Right.
Mhm.
It is also our opinion that to make this an attractive building going forward and a functional building, and also one that won't require ongoing maintenance all the time,
Mhm.
that a budget of somewhere around under $100,000 would be appropriate to make changes that would bring it up to speed for use and for safety. And I think that's all we need to say.
So just clarify for me, Chris, this budget of under 100,000, is this something we're asking for to happen now, or is this what's going to go into 6 years from now? I'm just confused. It's just,
Well,
Yeah.
so let's keep in mind the capital plan is improvements, capital improvements to a property. So if
Mhm.
you're talking about renovating something, so if we were decided to, for instance, if we were going to go and renovate the town hall, we wouldn't go and wait in the capital plan to do that. We would bring it to the town and say, we need the town to allocate $100,000 to make the changes today
I see. Okay.
for the thing. So
Okay.
what I'm suggesting is we recommend to the selectmen that this be put on the front burner,
Gotcha.
and that
Okay.
they bring it. So if you followed the Kent Center School and their changes to the front
Entrance, yeah.
entrance there, thank you. They made a deal with the Board of Finance a year or so ago that they would return money, but when they needed to put this thing, they'd come back. And that's what's happened. So now we're going to have a town meeting that's going to, actually, we did approve, didn't we, Joyce?
Yes, we did.
We just approved the
We
money
did. Yeah.
in the last town meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so in theory, that's how one would do it. Now,
I see.
that
Okay.
that could be done in stages. The town could say, the selectmen could say, we want to go to the town and say, we want to spend up to $100,000 over the next 3 years.
Mhm.
And, it could be $25,000 or $33,000
Yeah. So that answers my question. So that what we're working on today is not something that's going to be part of the capital plan 6 years down the road. We want to get stuff done sooner rather than later.
if
Okay.
that is the recommendation of this committee. Yep.
Yeah.
But that would require a town meeting.
Well, if you want to get things done, and so if you want to get anything, any money out of the town that is not in a budget,
Mhm.
then you have to go and ask for the town to do it, and then they ask the Board of Finance and they find the money.
Mhm.
So, Zan, to answer your question, we
Yeah.
could go in and say, okay, selectmen, we want a one-time $100,000 plunk
Mhm.
and in the budget. And that's going to get everybody all riled up because
Yeah.
it's just going to be one of these where, what do you mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to having a real discussion and dialogue
Right.
Mhm.
in a town forum to say,
Right.
do we really need this? And it could be, our recommendation could get shot down by the general public.
Mhm.
But I
And
think
then we
it
would
makes
have
sense.
to reboot. The selectmen would have to reboot, and then they likely would reboot us to say, okay, figure out another way.
Mhm. I think what you've said makes a lot of sense, Chris. I kind of feel finally that there's something concrete that we can be doing in terms of the town.
Has there ever been a case in Kent where, some angel has come up and given seed money for a project and then asked the town to fund the rest of it?
There have been donations. As an example, there was a $10,000 donation for the sidewalk committee for the sidewalks, not the committee, the sidewalks.
Mhm.
And there have been other donations, I think, over time, but they have never been matching, or they've never been substantial enough.
Yeah,
$10,000 is going to get you maybe 2-3 pavers.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that's also, Zan, I think what will likely happen, so we would be disbanded. Once we report to the selectmen, we are disbanded and discharged. And then it's brought to a town meeting, if indeed the selectmen decide to do that. And if it's approved, the selectmen then would put together another committee to oversee a build out of that over whatever the plan is. So
Mhm.
that's when the nitty gritty gets in. What
Mhm.
kind of kitchen, what kind of bathroom, what kind of changes, and all of those come with bids, 3 bids, and they all go into to selectmen for review before any of that is done.
Mhm.
So that's why I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I think we've done a good job at getting the building tight. I think we've done a good job at spotlighting the building. I think we just need to put a final report in front of the selectmen that says, this is our recommendation. And I don't think we necessarily have to get into, I think I agree with Marge, we do need to have a little bit more clarity, once again, from the building official and the fire marshal as to, can
Yeah.
we use upstairs, and if so, how much? But that's another question, that would be, and we could say to them, the fire marshal and the building official say we can use upstairs, but we're not talking about renovating an apartment because that is a significant amount of money.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they want to do that, that's another thing.
Mhm. Yeah, but
Um,
it is, we need to find out if it's potential.
Right.
yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, I've been confused about that all along. I know the stairs are an issue. And the access. And I'd love to, see if we could even just noodle out how that might happen to know that it is viable.
Hey, Joyce,
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
are there any can you check to see if there are any state statutes to speak to what I believe Stan told me,
Which was,
which is a municipality cannot rent out office space or
sure.
residential space?
Okay. I will find out for you.
Because we don't rent out anything, right?
Yeah.
Aside from an event space, but we don't rent out any apartments. We don't rent any.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That would be great. And I'll check
Okay.
with Stan and Joe as well.
What about, don't a lot of municipalities own housing that they rent out?
Houses?
I don't know.
Housing, apartment buildings,
Um,
low-income housing.
it's usually done through a low-income housing association, or like up in Sharon, up in Cornwall, it's not a town building.
Mhm.
It's a town-sponsored development.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll answer the question. That's all.
Okay. can we get back to this, the budget request for operating budget? I'm still, Chris, of two minds about whether we can be more successful in getting support if we can show something attractive that people can buy into and not just make them envision what we're spending money on, that they don't know what it is and they don't want to vote for it. I mean, it's like all the arguments about, do we have granite curbs or do we have, tar top or concrete or whatever. If you can provide a selling point in terms of a couple of attractive renderings and a floor plan, then people will say, hey, this looks like it'd be really great. I wouldn't mind renting that space for an event, or my organization could really use that for ABC. I don't know. I don't think we should eliminate that possibility at this point. We don't have to decide today.
Well,
We can do it without cost.
well, again, keep in mind, let's go back to what we were charged with.
Mhm,
We need to come up with a plan.
mhm.
And I don't think it's prudent to come up with a very specific plan, but to say, and you've done a lot of research, Zan, from contractors and finding out, and we've brought enough people through there that we have a fairly good cost idea as to what we're dealing with. I think,
Well, in all honesty, I mean, you're the only one who's gotten cost estimates for interior work. I haven't talked to contractors about that. I've only talked to them about repairs, maintenance.
okay, but anecdotally, you know that those are within the ballpark.
Mhm.
And I think that that's all that's important. I want to just restate that this committee will not be the one that's doing the build out.
Mhm.
I
I mean,
mean,
it
one of
may
us,
end up, it could end up that we are, all three of us might end up on the next committee, but I see
Correct.
completely what you're saying, Chris.
and so I think our obligation right now is to say, we're not going to design the look. We have an idea, we
Mhm.
have a thought process, but it'll probably change when the final outcome is done. But generally speaking, this is what we're looking at, inside and out, to make this a viable building.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think that it's just going to give the impetus for the selectmen to, one, discuss it, and two, decide what they want to do and how they want to take it forward.
Mhm.
So I think the budget is important,
Mhm.
and I believe, and help me if I'm wrong, I think we nailed that down a while ago. Now I'm talking about the annual budget, not the capital plan,
Right.
and
Okay.
not the long-term renovation process.
Okay, my biggest question about the annual budget
Yeah.
is, do we propose that the roof replacement take place in 1 year or 2 years? And can we get a commitment to year 2 if we only do the back portion this year? The way I've broken it down, if we do just the rear roof, which we've decided as a group, we're not going to try to replace that chimney. If we do the rear roof, it would be 15,800, 12,800 for the roofing, 3,000 for carpentry for the ancillary areas. And there's no chimney involved here. And then to do the front roof would be about 21,250, which is, well, not including any contingency, which is 13,900 for the roofing, 3,000 for carpentry, and $5,330 for rebuilding the chimney and flashing. So that's breaking it up into 2 years. Putting it all together is at least 35,000. That is for an annual budget of 47,800. what's your advice on that, Chris? Because you've been through this process many more times than I have.
So help me here. What is the lifespan left on the roof, if any?
0. It was supposed to have been replaced in 2009.
Okay. Okay.
It's very
So,
fragile. And if we don't replace it, there's serious risk. I have a statement from the roofer. There's serious risk that there could be damage to the underlying sheathing of, roof sheathing and potential risk for water damage.
okay.
Aside
So,
from the fact that there are tarps in 2 places that only are good for about a year.
I just want to remind you guys that we had this very discussion at the December meeting, and you all agreed to put $35,000 in the operating budget as a one-time expense for the roof.
Right.
So that's already in the draft that I am going to submit to the Board of Selectmen for their approval. So you're kind of rehashing something that you've already
Okay.
made a decision on.
Right.
Okay,
And-
I'm just wondering, due to the resistance that I've heard, if that's a reasonable thing to have on an annual budget, if there's going to be pushback both on the part of the selectmen and or the Board of Finance.
There's always going to be pushback, but you might as well go for the whole thing in one shot as opposed to breaking it up and getting pushback and having to do it twice. The worst that they can do is say no, that you need to split it, and you already have numbers and plan in place that you could do that, but
Yeah.
you don't get if you don't ask. So I
Okay.
thought you guys had already agreed to ask.
Yeah, I thought we
I
had
believe
to.
we had.
So-
In addition, or in addition, if you will, or in the same vein, all we're doing, Zan, is making a recommendation. So I think we have to stick with the roof needs replacement now.
Mhm.
Okay.
And now it's your problem. Tag, you're it, you 3 selectmen. It's not our problem.
Mhm.
But I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I will be a pain in your side if you don't do it, because it's fragile and it's going to leak and it's going to ruin everything we've already started.
Right.
It's already been leaking.
Well, but
Go
you know what
ahead.
I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it is our responsibility to give them an assessment.
Mhm.
And where I'm sort of pushing and why I'm pushing this is I think the assessment should be done now.
Mhm.
I think we need to wrap up what we're doing and put a report forward that says, or item number 1, we took care of all this. Item number 2, the most important thing is the roof, and we've asked you to budget it for next year. Item number 3 is the long-term plan, where we believe that should be used by the town and the taxpayers with a commitment over time of about $100,000.
That makes sense.
And then just wrap it up.
Okay. How you asked how long you think it'll take to get a final report together. I'm making my way through a list of civic organization heads and people that are, might be potential users. I think it's important to be able to get that referred to as an addendum to our report or whatever. I think as many potential uses as we can think of would be helpful. I mean, Marge, you could be really helpful in that, because I know the Historical Society might be a prime user for exhibition space, for, annual event, for, maybe even lectures, talks, whatever.
Yep.
And also to see if, there's any appetite with the current administration at KCS for continuing to do the programs that you've done in the past, or similar programs for local town education.
Oh, I'm sure they will be, because I've kept in touch with the teachers. It's
Yeah.
that will be used. But
Yeah.
that's all part of the Historical Society using it.
Right. But if you could say Kent Center School
Yep.
in conjunction with the Historical Society. So we need to write that up too. I don't want to overcommit myself. I'm here for February until I get my COVID shots, and then I fly home. So I don't know how much I'll be able to accomplish in terms of writing in a household with two lively children. Um,
Well,
but
we have the next Board of Selectmen's meeting is the 9th, is it not, Joyce?
That is correct.
That was my question. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I-
if
I
we're on the
will-
9th, that's 14 days.
I won't have anything ready for the 9th.
In
So
terms,
my concern there um, is that if we don't have something in front of the selectmen, then it pushes off to March.
but, okay, what are you envisioning putting in front of the selectmen, Chris? Does it include this report of potential users, or is it just the thing?
I don't think we need to get into that
Not yet,
personally.
right. I
We
think that-
already know,
Yeah.
all three of us have already known and talked to all the different organizations. And they have all said, for the most part, they would love to use it.
Yeah.
But the expectation is, in my mind, at least the ones I've spoken with, the expectation is they don't want to rent it. They
Yeah.
want to use it for the most part. And they also don't want it to be what it is now. They want it nicer space
Right.
for them to
So
be
I think
comfortable. And we're
Zan-
all in agreement.
Yeah, Dan, to take the pressure off you now, I think what you're talking about is something that could be the basis for the next committee, the next task force. And that if we can start getting our thoughts together on that, it would be helpful to be able to hit the ground running when that time comes. But I think right now it's sufficient to say that we know there's support in town because we've talked to several civic groups, and leave it at that.
Uh, um,
I don't think we need to convince them.
Mhm.
I think we need to make our case as to the work we've done and then the belief of what we think has to happen with this building.
Okay, February 9th is right around the corner. I would prefer, this is something I talked to Jean about at one point. It's very hard to have any kind of in-depth conversation and answering questions at a Board of Selectmen's meeting where there are 10 other items on the agenda and 1 million people waiting in line to have their opportunity to speak. Is this something that could be discussed at a special meeting that could take place later than the 9th? I don't even have all my files here.
I'm sorry?
I don't even have all my files here. So,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, what if we outlined and you can do it, I can do it, Marge can do it, and we can all kick it around in an email. And if we can't make the 9th, we can't make the 9th. But I think it's better for our case that we put forward what we believe and get that in the public forum, especially as the budget starts to form,
Mhm.
such that the selectmen will have it as in top of their mind as to how to fit all the numbers together.
Yeah,
And we don't have to come out, we don't come out until April, I think, in end of March, early April, right, Joyce, for the final budget?
Yes, but keeping in mind that, again, trying to have the town meeting, we may have to wrap things up a little bit sooner if we're gonna try to do any other form of voting, like a referendum or something. So you may lose a couple weeks.
Right. So, thank you, Joyce. That's very helpful. So that just speaks to, so think of it this way, guys. If we present to the selectmen and they say, okay, we're behind it, and now we're not disbanding you. We want you to get architectural drawings or renderings or something that's going to let people understand, and we're going to go to a town meeting with that to
Mhm.
get you the funds. We'll have that much more time to prepare.
right,
Yeah, we definitely need that.
right. But we've
But
got
we
to
push it off.
get something for February 9th. We need to do that. We need to
But-
put together the basics for February 9th. Is that what you're saying, Chris?
I am.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that it's wise to stick this in the middle of a regular Board of Selectmen's meeting or to have a meeting to present it?
I honestly think we're overthinking it, and
Mhm.
maybe, I don't know what you're thinking as a report, Zan, might be different than mine. I don't think this is an exhaustive report. I
Mhm.
see this as a simple one page that says, the committee has met and we have achieved our 3 objectives. And this is our final conclusion. Then they're going to ask us questions of how we got there. And we're going to say, well, we talked to these guys and that guy. And they're going to say, well, how'd you get to 100,000? And we're going to say, well, you know, we ballparked this and that based on conversations with, but we're not going to go and start doing all that hard work if the town's not going to support us.
Right.
Why
Right.
should we do that?
No, I understand that. But even that kind of conversation, I mean, I have been uncomfortable, quite frankly, in a couple of the Board of Selectmen's meetings that I've participated in, because I see all these faces of people that are on the agenda that with things they want to talk about. And the selectmen are asking a lot of questions about the Swift House project, and you want to be able to give a full and complete answer, but you feel horribly rushed and not very informative because of the situation. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think a special meeting is required, and or if indeed the selectmen can't handle it or they have so many more questions, they're going to table that for maybe a special meeting. So let's not be afraid of it. Let's get in line. Let's do what everybody does. And yeah, and you know, the good news is you can jump off. I can't.
I had that thought during a wetlands meeting the other night, Chris.
It's going to be exceedingly difficult for me to make a February 9 deadline. I have, you know, I just found out last night that the state government, the state Democratic Committee, I don't know if this is true for Republicans as well, but there will not be no caucuses this year because of COVID. And so we're having to change the whole nominating procedure and how we involve the population, the Democratic registered voters in Kent. And I have a lot of work to do for that.
But Zan, I think what Chris is saying, we don't have to do a lot of work for this.
No, okay.
Because we went over those figures. We had the 10,000 for this, the 15 for that, the 25 for this, the 25 for that.
Okay.
You know, if it just, as he said, just a one pager, you know, maybe Chris,
we sent a pretty complete report at the end of last year. I did. It was 2.5 pages. I'm not sure. I'm not putting it in a single page, but I will draft something and circulate it, and we'll figure out if we think it addresses all the needs.
I mean, if
Zan, if it doesn't, we'll table it. But I think it's in our best interest, in the building's best interest, to get this pushed forward.
Okay, and you're pretty cogent on this idea that the selectmen can propose something that isn't a capital budget request that will be addressed by the town in some other way. I mean, I know that the Kent Center School entrance thing was a thorn in everybody's side, but that they had money that they saved from the prior year's budget to put toward it, which made it more palatable. I mean, can you think of other incidents where something comes up? But
again, while I appreciate your sensitivity to it, it's not our problem. It's a selectman's problem.
So
I know you don't feel that way because I can see it in your face.
Well, I can appreciate that it's a selectman's problem, but I'm interested in knowing how they're going to go about making it happen.
I would go further.
Right?
I would go further. You're more than interested. You want to do it.
Right.
And I get it. I get it. But this is government. This isn't private.
I want to try for the most opportunity for success.
And I understand and I can appreciate that. And I appreciate you allowing me to push back on you for all these days. But I think what we need to do is wrap it up, make it their problem, and then ride them to make sure that that problem does not go away and get swept under like it's been in years past.
And then make sure those of us who want to be are on the next committee, and I'm willing I'm willing to stick with it.
I mean, I would like very much to see this project through.
Right. Right, so we're not giving up now, but I think Chris has made a very good point that it's time to tell them to put up or shut up. And this is it, and we've got a few days left. If you want to send me, I don't know if you sent us that 2-page report that you did for the year end before, I'd be happy to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think I did circulate it to everybody, and I will send it out again.
Send it again, I would appreciate that,
Yeah.
because we can probably come up with something very easily, very quickly. I scribbled some notes, but maybe just on the 10,000 here, the 15,000, 25, whatever it was.
Yeah, I have that.
Just
written
finesse
down.
that a little bit to get it to the number that we're going to add to a 1-page report, and that's it. I think we put a lot of hard work to get where we are.
Mhm.
Let's take a little break while we put it in their court. You've got stuff to deal with. I've got a lot of stuff I've got to deal with. Chris is busy.
I got nothing.
Okay,
Oof.
well, you know, and this, of course, this number that we've come up with doesn't include roof and chimneys, which.
No, because that's in the budget that's already,
Yeah, being proposed for operations.
yeah.
Okay, all right, well, let me see, is there anything else on the agenda besides?
Well, you had potential grants down for me, but it's very clear looking at the National Park Service's guidelines or whatever you call them for restoration and preservation. They don't recommend any kind of interior, moving walls, moving kitchens, renovating, anything like that. So I think this is out.
Yeah.
I mean, I still would like to
High
pursue
construction.
getting it on the historic register if I can. I'm waiting for some more emails back. I don't think we can rule out getting funding from SHPO. I haven't finished that conversation yet because I was waiting to figure out about the National Park Service stuff, but I'm still working on that. I think it's a slim chance. I still would like to see the building on that register, but whether that can leverage money or not, I don't know. So that's my report for that.
Okay. Okay, other funding possibilities, you know, as I said, I've talked to both Berkshire Taconic and, you know, I don't know how many, they have a program which I thought might work for us, which is called designated, you know, designated projects or gifts or needs, but that's a long-term thing.
Yeah, so again, this is
Yeah.
the next iteration of this committee.
Yeah, I mean, that requires an endowment of $25,000 plus, you know, then you can only use a percentage of the endowment each year for ongoing
Yeah.
needs. So I don't think that will work, but I'll stay in touch with them and see if there's anything else they can suggest. And, you know, if you know of anybody who wants to fund a project in town, I mean, I was thinking that we might approach Sotheby's. They're right across the street. They've had a flush year. They care about their neighborhood. Maybe they'd like to
They
put.
don't.
They don't? They don't care about the neighborhood?
I think that we're getting way down the pike.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us to worry about funding right now.
Right.
All
Right.
No
right.
reason.
It was on the agenda, so I just
No
brought
reason.
that up. But I think it's time to just wrap this up. I agree with this section of what we've done.
Okay. Do we need another, well, are we going to all be there for the February 9 meeting?
Yeah, I think I will be.
Do we need to meet before that or?
What time is it? Usually 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, yes.
I'll do my best. I don't think I have anything on the calendar. What day of the week is that?
Tuesday.
Yeah, I can get out of my usual Tuesday night thing.
Okay. Okay. I've got it on the calendar. Okay, guys, we've got our marching orders.
So do you, so Zan, just from the, where we're going. You're going to draft up an outline of a report, or we'll flush that out and send it around to us, and then we'll send it back to you?
And I'm also going to send out again a copy of what I sent to the selectmen in December.
Okay, fine.
I probably have that somewhere, but if you've got it,
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be great.
I can easily do that.
cool.
Okay, guys, thank you
All right.
all. Thank you,
Make a-
Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank
Motion to-
you. Have a good
Motion to
evening.
adjourn.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. I'll second. Take care.
Thanks.
Dan.
Bye.